All right. Welcome, everybody, to Four Quick Cues Book Talk with Enfys. This is the live interview chat show where I ask pagan authors 4 quick questions determined by a roll of the dice. If you have any questions to ask our wonderful guest, please pop them in the comments. We'll circle them back to them at the end. I am your host, Enfys Book of MajorArqueerna.com, and with me today is Yvonne Aburrow, who has been a pagan since 1985 and a Wiccan since 1991. They have an MA in Contemporary Religions and Spiritualities from Bath Spa University in the UK. They were born in England and now live in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada. They have written 4 books on the mythology and folklore of trees, birds, animals, and 2 anthologies of poetry. And their most recent books are, got them right here, All Acts of Love and Pleasure, Inclusive Wicca, Dark Mirror, The Inner Work of Witchcraft, and the one that Yvonne has and I don't is The Night Journey, Witchcraft as Transformation. Woohoo! And they blog at Dowsing for Divinity. Yvonne, welcome, and thank you for joining me for 4 quick cues.
Thank you very much for the splendid welcome.
We have a magic dice today because I pulled a green dice from my bag, so it is basically invisible. Woo! And we're going to go ahead and roll, see where we land. If I don't drop it, that would be good. Okay, we're starting with question number 5. What drew you toward, I'm going to say, the subject matter of the most recent book, which is that Dark Mirror, or is that the Night Journey book?
Well, originally Dark Mirror and the Night Journey were a single book. And then I realized that I'd written 150,000 words, so I was going to need to split them into 2. So the purpose of the question, let's treat it as a single book.
There we
go. Well, what happened was I noticed that people were in ritual, and there's always a triggering incident with these things. I was at a ritual and I noticed that people were kind of shouting at the quarters, like, I summon you kind of thing. And I was like, seems a bit rude. And also, like, because I always teach people to make an inner connection with the element first, because that gives them time to sort of get comfortable and figure out what they're going to say and actually make the magical connection with the element. Rather than just kind of going, right, I'm going to shout at the quarter. So that was the inciting incident. And then I tried to structure it in such a way that it covered the same kind of things that most books cover, but with that extra angle of talking about the inner work of the ritual. And so by inner work, I mean what's going on inside you when you're doing the outer ritual actions. And I got the phrase inner work from Jeffrey Samuel, who I was at a conference on ritual, and he had chaired an entire strand about the inner work of ritual. And I thought, I prefer that to talking about spirituality, because that's a word that gets massively misused. And so, and I also had a bit of a rant about, about spirituality and its misuses in the introduction as well.
Indeed.
And yeah, so I think, and then obviously, as with All Acts of Love and Pleasure, I wanted to make sure that the whole book was inclusive as well. And I realized that I had a hell of a lot more to say about inclusive Wicca, because I'd really only scratched the surface with All Acts of Love and Pleasure, and of course people then said, oh, but what about this and what about that? And so I had more to write on the subject of being inclusive as well. So
yeah, and you and I were just talking before this started about how that's how I found your work, was through your essay in Queer Magic Power Beyond Boundaries. That's all about the Inclusive Wicca Manifesto, and that's one of the first things in that anthology. And wow, when I read that, it was just like mind blown. Love it. And I'm so glad that I was introduced to your work that way, because it's been really, really helpful for me in my journey.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's an actually really interesting piece, because it was the initial, genesis of that was that we have an Inclusive Wicca Facebook group, and in that group, a bunch of us kind of thrashed out, okay, what would we want to see? Because obviously there's the LGBT inclusivity, but then there's also making sure we include disabled people, and that we're not culturally appropriating, and that we're not assuming that everybody's duotheist, and we're not assuming that everyone's even a theist necessarily. And we're not assuming that like everyone in the circle is going to be white. They might be, we obviously want to welcome people of different ethnicities. So there was more than just the and then there's neurodivergent people as well. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was welcomed. And so we kind of thrashed out how we were going to word it to make sure it was properly inclusive. And then I kind of wrote it up, expanded on each point, explaining what they were. And then Lee Harrington made some suggested edits as well, which were really helpful. So by the time that was a work of a lot of people coming together to go, okay, what's going to be in our manifesto? So that was an interesting process.
Indeed. And you have a copy of that anthology nearby to hold up? Because I forgot to grab mine from the bookshelf before I got settled in my very tight green screen and light situation. So
there it is.
There it is, because there's 2 books called Queer Magic that came out about the same time. So make sure this is the one with the handprint and Power Beyond Boundaries. The other one's quite good as well, but this is the one we're referring to here.
Yeah.
So excellent. Let's give it a roll and see what the next question is going to be. All right, we got 11. How did you get started writing?
Oh, I think, well, I've started, I always loved creative writing at school. And I think that, I've just kind of always known that I was going to write books. So, because I wrote my first book, The Enchanted Forest, in 1991. And that was kind of like, okay, I'd like there to be a book about trees that covers the folklore and mythology and symbolism, and there wasn't one. So I thought, well, I'll have to write it then, which is a good way to pick a topic, because you just go, okay, I'm going to pick a topic, and you might as well pick a topic that's like a niche that nobody else has covered. As to I started blogging in 2003, which was about started because I felt
when blogs became a thing. Yeah,
right when blogs became a thing. It was also because I felt the need to rant about the first Gulf War and what a bad idea that was. So yeah, and I've just always written poetry and articles for magazines, and if I had to not write, it would be like losing a limb or something.
Definitely is a fulfilling passion. All right, let's see what the next one is. Ooh, critical fail. Number 1. Tell us about a magical mistake you've made and what you learned from it.
Oh, that's a good one. This is like one of those interview questions, isn't it? Like, tell us about the time that something went wrong and how did you do it?
Tell us your biggest weakness. Yeah.
Yeah. Magical mistake. Well, there's those times when you initiate people that you wish you hadn't. That's one, but I don't want to go into that. Magical mistake. I think actually my favorite one is, it's a pretty minor mistake, but I always use it as an illustration of how to deal with the situation when you have made a mistake. There's always that time when you go, oh my God, I've been doing a ritual for 20 years or whatever, and then you go, oh, I forgot to call the quarters, or something stupid like that, right? So rather than kind of having a big meltdown in the middle of the circle and go, oh my God, I forgot to call the quarters, it's a disaster, you kind of make like you meant to do it. And so you're just like, all is well, this was intentional. Just like, I'm going to pretend I'm a swan floating across the waters of the ritual. And then you go, let the quarters be called. And you go and you start calling the quarters, as if it was entirely on purpose that you forgot.
Always solid life advice, fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, the main key thing about ritual is that you want to maintain the ritual atmosphere. So, rather than sort of going, disaster, and start to comment on, oh my God, I did it wrong, and you just pretend that you did that intentionally. And then it doesn't break the mood of the ritual, which is good.
Yes, that's pretty important. I think I once called South in the West or something like that and had people be like, it says one. I'm like, oh, right. Let's try that again. And just, yeah, it's easy to do those things, especially if you've had a busy day and you're just trying to get your head on straight. And yeah, sometimes things get mistaken and it's not the end of the world. We always like to say the gods have a sense of humor. So if something goes wrong, they'll have a good laugh and we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there was one time when I knew what I was doing, but I forgot to check with the people whose ritual it was if their thing was the same as my thing, which was that I was our lineage always starts calling the quarters in the north, whereas most people, and I didn't know that most people started in the east. So I went to the north and started doing my thing, and they were looking at me like, what planet are you from? So, it was a bit awkward. It was a public ritual as well, so it was a bit awkward.
Oh dear. But you survived to tell the tale.
I survived to tell the tale.
Excellent. All right, lucky number 4 question. Oh, sorry, did you have something to add there?
Despite all the tutting and sighing in the background.
And still the ritual was had and all was well.
Yeah.
Big money, no whammies. Ooh, lucky number 13. How has the pandemic influenced your writing?
Oh, well, apart from the need to kind of go, I thought you were going to say, how has the pandemic influenced your ritual? Because I can definitely answer that question. As to the writing, I think most of my panicking is done about climate change. I am seriously worried about climate change. And I feel like, although clearly the pandemic is a result of our encroachment upon nature and the virus leaking out from the wild, I think that the pandemic as such hasn't necessarily influenced my writing, apart from the need to go, well, in times of pandemic, we do this. But apart from that, I don't think it's had a major effect, but it certainly had an effect on ritual because, obviously we all had to learn to do ritual over Zoom, and you have to get quite creative. I think one of the things that we've done that is quite interesting is like whoever's the northernmost person geographically in the ritual calls north, whoever's the easternmost person calls east, and so on, so that you actually get that giant circle across the landscape.
That's brilliant. I really like that. That's really cool. We have tried so many different ways to cast in Zoom ritual, and that's one we have not tried. So that's really cool.
Obviously, you end up with a really weird shape because, like, depending on where all the people are, you can end up with a circle. It's like the east and west are really close together.
Right. Then, like, the north is 3 states away or something. Yeah. I was thinking, we have a lot of people in Maryland, and we've had people from Chicago and California join us. So it would probably be, what do you do if one person is both the southernmost and the westernmost? Because that would be the case with some of ours. Do they call both directions?
Well, you could do that, or you could just arbitrarily decide that somebody else is the other one, whichever.
Okay. Interesting. I love that. Okay, well, that was the 4 questions. I'm going to drop into the chat now with some links to follow Yvonne online, and also how to get their latest book, Dark Mirror. And I am now going to awkwardly reach for my laptop because that is more reliable for showing me if there are questions in the chat. But could you take a moment, Yvonne, while I do that, and talk about your books and where people might find them?
Yeah, sure. So if you would like to buy any of them, you can get them from shop.dorianvaliente.org for the and you can buy them on all the usual online retailers. And if you're boycotting any of those retailers, then you just go straight to shop.dorianvaliente.org for Dark Mirror.
Sorry, that decided to play with volume suddenly, and so we had a little bit of double there.
Dark Mirror and The Night Journey, which I can just about go both at the same time on the screen. dorianvaliente.org, and you can also get All Acts of Love and Pleasure from Avalonia Books, and both of those publishers have Instagram and Twitter accounts, so you can follow them on there as well. And yes, I also want to talk about my book that I am currently writing, which is called
Please do.
Yes, it's called Changing Paths, and I have a publisher for it, but we haven't actually signed the contract yet, so I will reveal who that is at another time. And it's about the experience of joining paganism and also leaving paganism, because there are, and coming back to paganism, because I did that. I was like, okay, I'm leaving paganism. No, I'm coming back. And so I always say to people, like, don't slam the door on the way out, because you might want to come back in. So I think that's going to be a really interesting book. And I'm also looking for short pieces, short contributions to the book from people who've either arrived from some other tradition or have left paganism and gone somewhere else. So
Interesting.
yes,
That's
if anyone
great.
would like to contribute a piece, then let me know.
And there are also links to buy all your books on your website, dowsingfordivinity.com, which is also included in the comments if people wish to check that out.
Yeah, I also have YvonneAburrow.com, which has links to all my ridiculously large number of websites.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Yvonne. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to chat with you. You had me on your interview show, and now we've been able to swap, and I feel like it's come about in a nice circular sort of way. So at this point, we will wrap up the show. Thank you all so much. There are no questions in the chat at this point, but if anyone does have questions and wants to contact Yvonne, check out, if you're on YouTube, check out the show notes for links to Yvonne's various social channels. And if you're on Facebook, check out the comments for those links. Yvonne, have a wonderful evening, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. It was great. I really enjoyed it.